Alright guys, this one was a pretty heavy leaner. Tree was starting to uproot there at the base. You can see how heavy it's leaning over the fence. It had been there for a while, but we used another pine tree that was right next to it to set up a climb line and the rigging line so that we could tip tie everything, swing it over, and then bring it down into the pasture. When you walk over there towards the base of the tree, you can really feel the roots uplifting and how close this thing was to coming over. So we got all our lines set up, got up in the tree. This is in the live tree right here, the one we're using to tip tie everything, just clearing out the stubs so that pieces don't get stuck as we're trying to bring them down. If you've ever done tip tying before, you know just how frustrating that can be. And it can happen with any kind of rigging, but I've found it happens more often with when you're tip tying into another tree and you got stubs or whatever where you're wanting to bring pieces down. Somebody's probably going to give me a hard time for hitting the wound wood a little bit there on that stub, but oops. So right here, I already got the first piece tied up, the tip of it, where it was basically leaning into this other tree that we're rigging from. So I'm just getting into position where I can go ahead and make the first cut. When you're doing this sort of stuff, you'll notice one of the things I do here is I trim out a number of the branches that are kind of coming back towards me on this piece I'm about to cut. That's mostly important because my climb line is up there as well. My climb line's up above the rigging point, and when this piece comes off, you don't want it tangling up in your line. Also got to watch for that rope dropping down onto the saw. Also got to be really careful catching stuff like that. Don't want to run your hand into the bar with the chain still spinning. But just got to know where your saw is, know where your hands are. The guy was telling me the rope was stuck on a nub there, and I knew it was, but we weren't worried about it. It was, once we put weight on the rope, it was going to jump off of there, and that wasn't going to be much of a drop. Good on him for watching out, though. He just didn't want that thing jerking around all over the place. Here I went for a slice cut. One thing you got to be real careful of when tip tying is you got to know where that butt end is going to go. If you do a conventional notch and lean it over to the side or something like that, and you don't judge it right, that thing can come back at you. So I wanted the slice cut so that the butt end shot down away from me towards the outside of the tree. You can see it twisting a little bit here. It's because I didn't get the direction of my slice cut perfect. But not a big deal. Worked out fine. Main thing was where I tied the branch was basically right next to the pulley, and the line was kind of straight across, maybe a foot or two. So it would have been enough where if I made the wrong cut, that butt end could have kicked back and hit me in the chest or whatever, which obviously you don't want. So when you're tip tying, you got to be really, really careful, and you got to know where that butt end is going to go. So in this case, that's why I did that slice cut, so the butt end would just drop down and basically shoot over towards the other tree. This tree was actually the first time I used that steel bar on that Echo chainsaw. So it flipped over to the 1/4 inch chain and bar on that little Echo 2511. And it was pretty great. I liked it a lot better than the 3/8 mini. Cut really well, super smooth. 12 inch bar, so it was a little bit shorter than the factory bar on the 2511. But it's a mean little saw, and that 1/4 inch chain is actually pretty nice on there, especially for trimming and pruning. And I use it on smaller removals like this, skinnier stuff, just because it's so light. When you got that saw in your harness, it barely even feels like it's there. Somebody sends you a different top handle or something, or a bigger saw when you need it, and it just feels like 100 pounds compared to that little Echo. You almost don't even notice the thing there.
Very similar to the last one. Maybe not quite as long. Yeah, I have. Heads up, base of the tree. And lots of food, but yeah.
Some guys might ask why we didn't remove the fence beneath us. That was actually going to be a lot more work. And sometimes these fences are so old that if you take them apart, they don't go back together quite like they came apart. When the wood gets rotted or the posts are rotted or something like that. So we decided it was best to just take the tree out over the fence instead of being able to just drop stuff straight down. You'll notice I do a different cut here. I'm not doing the slice cut again. I do a Humboldt notch. I like doing a Humboldt when I'm tip tying or I'm dropping the top out of a tree or something like that. For the same reason that I did the slice cut on the top of this one, because that helps keep that butt end from kicking back towards you. If you do a conventional notch and your hinge breaks early, then that butt can slide off the top of that stem back towards you. In this case, once it starts coming over with a Humboldt notch, the butt end will press against that stem that's left remaining. It won't really slide across the top. I'm sure there's a scenario where it could, but generally it's just a safer cut to keep stuff from kicking back towards you. This is another view of the same cut that we got from the ground. So you can see the mechanics of this a little bit more. I think you get a better view of it in a minute here, but what we're doing, so we tip tied the limbs, and if we dropped them straight down, they were going to come down on the opposite side of the fence, which would just be a major pain to try and cut everything up over there and then toss it over the fence and stuff. So we had the guys bring it down close to the ground, and then we were tying a rope on the butt end and using the mini skid to pull the whole piece back over the fence with a tag line. It worked out pretty well. It was super smooth. And then at that point, with the chipper, we've got a 15-inch chipper. So for the most part, they were able to, the ground guys were able to just take the entire piece over to the chipper and send it right in. We try and minimize how much we feed the chipper by hand, and if we can help it, we try and just use the machine. It's just less risk of a guy getting pulled in or something like that. You know, obviously everybody knows how to, all our guys know how to feed the chipper properly, but still no reason to introduce that kind of risk if you don't have to. So if we can bring down a big piece and have the machine shove it through there, that's what we do. Also saves a crap ton of work. We're in North Carolina where it's hot enough as is. So if the machine can do the work, we're more than happy to have the machine doing the work. Same thing right here, half hitch, down to a running bowline. This cut, you'll notice, is even different from the last one. I just did a snap cut because at this point I was far enough away from the other tree, and it had a hard enough lean where it didn't really matter where the butt was going to go. It was definitely going to go away from me. There was no question about that. So when you're tip tying, the main thing is knowing where that butt's going to go in relation to the climber. For the most part, you know, there could be a structure or something that you're over, but generally the main focus is, as the climber, where's that butt end going to go in relation to you? And at this point it didn't really matter because it was definitely going away from me. There was no possibility of it kicking back and hitting me. So yeah, here you can see where they pulled that thing across the fence, set it down, and they're getting me the rope back. And at this point in the job, we were just working to get the stem short enough to fit it inside the pasture and still be able to pull it over with the mini skid. We don't like guesswork, so we like to be certain that stuff is short enough, light enough, whatever it takes to make sure nothing gets broken and nobody gets hurt. So we went ahead and took one more log off, even though it was close. We probably could have flopped the stem over where it was right here, but we went ahead and just took another log off just to make sure the stem was short enough to fit in the pasture and that the mini skid was going to be able to pull it over, because you'll see when we flop the stem, and you probably already saw from the other pictures, this thing had a stout lean towards the back. And I was getting that set up on the porta wrap on the branch manager for those guys, doing the groundies work. If you can't have a little bit of fun while you're doing tree work, you need a new profession. Probably should have flipped to a bigger saw for this cut. It was a bit of a pain. I just ran a quick calculation on how much that log would have weighed. It would have been probably about 600 pounds. 600 to 700 pounds. It was about 13 inches diameter. So the bar of the saw was 12 inch. I was maybe an inch shy of getting all the way through it with that saw. So you're talking about 13 inch diameter, looking at about 50 pounds per foot of log, and that was a 12-foot log. So you're looking at basically 600 pounds, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So just to give you an idea of how much force we were putting on that other tree, really not a whole lot, especially with gentle swings. We didn't have hard drops or anything like that. That kept this job pretty smooth. And yeah, right here we're finishing up all the rigging. We're gonna do, 25 feet of stem left maybe. Getting my ascenders back on so I can go up and get all the rigging gear out of that tree I was tied into. Alright, so I cut out all the crap where I go up and get the rigging gear, get my line out. You'll see just how much of a lean this thing had. Tried to leave this notch wide open. I mean, I could have done more of an angle upward from the bottom, but just wanted to make sure the hinge didn't break early. So, nice wide open face so that the hinge would break after it's coming the right direction. My back cut was a little bit high here, but rather have that than low. Of course, I nicked my wedge. It's my favorite. And right here, with how hard of a lean, I wanted a nice strong hinge for the Mini to pull. I didn't want something that was going to bust loose early, so I left a pretty good hinge on there for it being just a stem. But just look at the lean on this thing. We wanted something where obviously the Mini would be able to pull it over, but not so skinny that it would just pop loose early. So, guy was going nice and slow just to make sure he didn't start spinning. Just pulled it up nice and easy. And there she blows. Finishing up the job with stump grinding. That machine's the sorry about the stump being right up at the top. I can't always see where the camera angle is on with the helmet cam, but that's the Carlton SP 6016 54 horse Kubota gas. That one's a 2022, and it's a great machine. It blows through stumps, especially if you keep the teeth fresh on it. We keep the green teeth on there, rotate them, and it tears them up pretty quick. So yeah, and you can see I walked over to the machine and I've spun that little dial on the back. That's for the swing speed on the cutter head. So when you're working with the remote control, you don't have the hydrostatic levers, so you got to manually adjust the swing speed depending on what you're doing. So in this case, just had to slow it down a little bit so the thing wouldn't bog down so much. But for the most part, it tears up stumps really well. It does a good job. You can see that stump off there to the right. I went ahead and did that one for free. Sometimes when you're already there and you're working for a good customer, you just go ahead and do the work. I think it took me a whole minute. That about wraps this one up. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe. Leave a comment. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.